Hello and welcome back. This is Candice with another video on the Possum Stamps YouTube channel. Today I have this super colorful Easter card that is inspired by this month's color palette challenge. So let's get started. So I'm starting off with some Canson watercolor paper in a size that's a little bit bigger than a card base to give myself some extra room. And I just came and painted that with some clean clear water so I can do a wet on wet technique. So I'm using my Distress inks and I'm just smooshing them down on my surface, and then I'm picking up some of the color and putting it down on the watercolor paper. There's not a lot of rhyme or reason. I tried to put colors beside each other that worked well together, and so they wouldn't mix to create mud, but you could definitely do this in whatever way you please. I really like this technique because it's very forgiving, but you could definitely do this with ink blending or anything else. I just wanted to create a fun Easter card, and for some reason watercolor was what I chose. So then once I was happy with how my background was looking and it had dried off a bit, I am going to come in with my grid transparency so I can stamp the sentiment down in the center. And I am going to heat emboss this in white. You'll see later on I do change gears with the sentiment, but I'll touch on that a bit later on. And then I'm going to come in with all of my little eggs from the Hoppy Easter stamp set. And I'm stamping 2 or 3 at a time and then coming in and heat embossing them. You might be wondering why I'm not using an acrylic block and just stamping these really easily, which two reasons why I'm not. One, I am horrible with an acrylic block. I love having the consistency of a Misty or a stamping tool. And two, this paper is watercolor paper, so it has a little bit more of a tooth. So I find that I usually need to stamp things, especially if it's Versamark, twice or 3 times in order for it to get in all the nooks and crannies. So I wanted to make sure after I'd already done this really pretty background that I didn't ruin it by stamping not the greatest. So I stamped a couple eggs at a time and then heat embossed them. And you can see I'm using my tracing paper so that I don't need to wash off my stamps after each time, especially because the Versamark can be a little bit harder to come off. So I generally like to just use a stamp cleaner once I'm all done with them. And that worked because I'm using the same ink for all of them. This card was inspired by this month's color palette for our Possum Stamps challenge. We would love to have you play along. All that you have to do is create a card or a project inspired by this month's color palette and use Possum Stamps products, and then share it to Instagram using the hashtag Possum Stamps Challenge. The cards are due at the end of the month, so this month it's April 29th at 11:59 Eastern Standard Time, and then we will randomly draw a winner and announce it on April 30th on the Possum Stamps Instagram. So we'd love to have you join us and use this super fun color palette for inspiration. Now back to the card, I have come in and smushed down the same ink colors in Distress inks that I was using on the background, but this time I'm using a lot less water and I'm just going in and painting the eggs with the same colors that are on the background underneath, just to kind of intensify the colors. I found that this was a very pretty look, but if you had the Distress re-inkers, you could also use those to get a more vibrant color, but I think either way it will look super pretty, and I love this rainbow color palette. So once that was done, I cut it down and I'm going to tape it to my card base. And then I decided that my sentiment was getting a bit lost in the background, so I wanted to instead make a sentiment strip with the same sentiment that says "Have a Hoppy Easter." So I double heat embossed that so it looked nice and puffy with my white embossing powder. And you just have to be careful that it doesn't shift around in your Misty, but it gives such a fun look. So I definitely encourage you to try that. While I was there, I also decided to stamp the little bunny ears that come in the set. I only showed me coloring the bent over ones, but I also have the ones that kind of point straight up. And I colored both of them the exact same using my N and very light R color Copics. And I ended up cutting these out and I'm going to pop them up behind the sentiment. So it looks like 2 little bunnies are hiding behind my sentiment. Once I had that glued down, I just added some additional cardstock behind so that it could pop up from the card base, and I was sure to cover that sentiment so you'll never know that it's under there. Well, now you will because you watched the video. And then of course I had to add some embellishments to finish off the card. I got this new container from Michael's that is absolutely perfect to hold all of my beautiful Possum Stamps embellishments, and for this one I again used the Spring Bling mix and used a bunch of the pastels that matched my background perfectly, so I kind of aligned them so they would match. And there we have the final card. We always appreciate hearing from you down below in the comments. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss any future inspiration from the design team. And I will see you in another video. Bye!